everyone, Doc T here for another podcast from the Horses Advocate. I'm glad you joined me. I'm glad that you're mucking your stalls and doing a great job, or driving down the road and not going off the road. Quick shout out to all of you guys who are members already, who are participating at thehorsesadvocate.com. I appreciate your investment and time into digging deeper to get great answers. If you're not a member yet, please go to The Horses Advocate. That's 3 words, thehorsesadvocate.com. It'd be great if you became a member. That helps support what I'm doing here and helps you get around like-minded people, and where you have access to all their minds put together as well as mine, where we discuss more ideas. Today, I just want to go over an idea that came to me basically from an email that I got from the American Association of Equine Practitioners. And I find it fascinating because a while ago, and I'm going to think is 6 or 7 years ago, I wrote an article for a magazine called the International Equine Veterinarian. And it was titled, Houston, We Have a Problem. And I have a copy of that right here. Yeah, I know. I stole it right from a movie, Apollo 13, but don't worry about it. It's just an expression that says, for all the planning that we've got, we sometimes get problems that make it more difficult to go with our plans, our goals. Things crop up, things that we just don't understand occur. So let me give you an example of synopsis of my article. And again, I don't have the exact date. Unfortunately, as I changed my file structures, I lost the date of when I actually wrote this. I could probably look it up in an old issue that I've got someplace. But right now, it's called Houston, We Have a Problem. It was in the International Equine Veterinarian that went out to equine vets, horse vets around the world. And it's kind of funny because the publisher of this magazine, who is a good friend of mine, he found me, and we saw a lot of things that we had in common. One was photography. And so we just started talking about things, and he started following my blogs. He liked my blogs, and he started asking me to write an article. And that became a monthly column in the International Equine Veterinarian, which is kind of funny because he thought it'd be a great idea. And I said, why not? I might as well get my ideas out there. And I went to an American Association Equine Practitioners Conference. We called it the AAEP or AAEP. And I was just riding on a bus from a hotel or airport or something. And we were filled with horse vets in there. It's kind of obvious to find the horse vets. We dress up kind of nice, but oftentimes we wear a cowboy hat or a belt buckle or boots or something. So we kind of stand out from the city folks. So I'm on the bus, and the guy and I are just talking, asking questions. And he says, so where are you from? What's your name? And I told him, no, actually, I had it on my lapel. That's what it was. He says, oh my gosh, I know you. I'm like, what do you mean? He says, I read your stuff all the time. I love your articles. Thank you so much. And this happened 2 or 3 times. And it happened with the president of the AAEP, who was a classmate a year ahead of me at Cornell, who Anne said, I just absolutely love your articles. Thank you so much for writing them. So I became a minor celebrity at the AAEP for a while until the publication stopped publishing, and now nobody knows about me because I'm not out there. But what I'm about to talk about in this podcast may get me back in the AAEP, and it's their fault. It's not mine. And that's because I'm agreeing with them, and I know that they have a problem. And I just got an email from them. Let me pop it up here. The email says, basically, I reach out to you today on behalf of the AAEP Board of Directors. This is the president, Scott Hay. Scott is a veterinarian down in South Florida. He's been around for a while. We've met once or twice. I've actually met his wife as I worked on her horse's teeth. a while back. But anyway, so he's the president, and he's reaching out to discuss perhaps, this is quoting, to discuss perhaps the most important issue facing the profession in a number of years, and that is the retention of veterinarians in equine practice. While not a new concern, the last year has brought us to what may be a tipping point created by practitioners leaving the profession and fewer veterinary students choosing to pursue a career as a horse doctor. Let me read on because I think this is pretty interesting. We've heard from private practice owners who are urgently seeking job applicants for open positions. We've talked to young practitioners about the current equine practice model and how, for many, it simply does not meet their needs for professional and personal satisfaction. And many in academia have shared the unfortunate reality of a dwindling interest in equine among veterinary students. And then he states, our profession has reached a critical juncture. Now, this is pretty amazing because they've set up a retention task force. They're currently doing in-depth interviews with veterinary students, new practitioners, and practice owners to understand their career expectations and pain points. It's interesting that they would conduct these interviews with students, practitioners, and practice owners, but nowhere do they talk to the horse owner themselves. And I find that disconcerting. As you all know, I believe that you horse owners are the driving force that keeps us going here. And it's kind of interesting that for me, a can of worms has been opened up. So let me explain what I mean by that. I think that's enough for that letter. Let me talk to you about my article that I wrote. I'm going to guess 6 years ago. It could be 7 or 8. I've lost track of time. Unfortunately, I don't have this in here. But it starts off by basically saying that we spend a lot of money in tuition to go to school and other factors, such as lost wages while we attend school. And I'm guessing we're spending at least $600,000 or more in lost wages, as well as tuition. I'm not going to count living expenses. We're just going to make that equal, whether it's in a college community or in an apartment in a city someplace. But basically, most students are going to invest at least $600,000 based on low costs. It's probably a lot more, and it's important to include lost income, because as a truck driver, I could work 8 years as a truck driver and have a starting salary of, let's say, 50, 60,000, maybe even more. And there's such a dire need for truck drivers out there. Every trucking company is having trouble filling their drivers' positions and keeping them safe on the road so they don't cause any accidents. So finding qualified truck drivers is very hard. So all of us could just drop our horse, our pitchfork right now, run out and learn how to drive a semi and do very well. And I used to do that. Some of you already know this. I drove 18 wheelers, including mostly with horses, but also with four wheelers and motorcycles and ski-doos, etc. And I drove long nose Pete's and cab over Max and Freightliners. So I've got a lot of experience in truck driving, and it's not a bad job. And now that they have electronic logs, it's really hard to fake it. So you only work 8 hours and you have to have several days off. And most companies are adapting to get drivers in there. So the truck driving industry basically has the same problem as the AAEP. Attracting people who want to be on the road for 8 hours, maybe live in a hotel or in the bunk of their truck and get home a couple of times on a weekend. And nobody wants to do that anymore. But the nice thing about being a truck driver is it would take you a couple of months to learn how to do it, a year or two of apprenticing, and you're on your way to earn a living, probably starting on day one. Plus, they give you some money as a sign-on bonus. So it's kind of interesting that truck driving has seemed to resolve the problems, but the AAEP is not. And the reason is it's going to cost you at least $600,000 just to go to vet school to be qualified. And for you to come out and try and get a job in the equine industry where they're not willing to pay you more than a truck driver. I mean, to start off, a starting salary for an equine veterinarian has risen over the years, and equality has occurred. But as recently as maybe 4 years ago, if you were a male, you earned more money as a starting equine veterinarian than a female, which was quickly resolved because almost all the students coming out wanting to work with horses are females now, with very few males. So they've gotten some equilibration there. But to equilibrate your starting salary versus the amount of time and money spent invested in it, economically, it makes no sense to become an equine vet. It makes a lot more sense to go out and become a truck driver. And this is basically what I said in my article years ago. So I was at a client's house about the time of me writing this article. In fact, it's stimulating me to write this article, where in her kitchen was a man who is the director of a veterinary hospital at a university in the United States. He was a former professor at one university and moved up the hierarchy into academic position of being in charge of training all the veterinarians, both small and large animal. A brilliant guy. He and I are very similar in personalities, in our belief systems, in our philosophy. And we instantly basically became man friends. What do they call those? Whatever. Anyway, and I asked him, sitting at the kitchen table, sipping our waters. That's all we were sipping, water and our stocking feet. And I asked him, how many students are going to graduate this year? And that year in May, he said there was 119 veterinary students graduating from his class. So I said to him, okay, so how many good horse veterinarians are going to graduate? And he looked at me and he just screwed up his face with, all the wrinkles and the squinting eyes in trying to appreciate and understand my question. And he basically said, good horse vets? And I kind of laughed because I said, okay, good. Yeah. And he says, of the 119 graduating students, I can give you 2 that will be good horse vets. And maybe another 2 after that, if they get some help, they might become good. So that blew my mind, because if there are only 2 students graduating from this Midwestern veterinary college that wanted to be involved in becoming horse vets, that really, really is shocking. Because if at that time I think there are 28, maybe there's 30 vet schools in North America, that means that if that's the same case across the country, that means there's about only 60 horse vets that are being graduated each year that would be considered good, and maybe another 60 that would be mediocre. And that just blew my mind. Now, back then, the horse population was dropping. It went from about 10 million horses down to 6.5 million. Most of it was because the fascination with the unwanted horse basically shut down all breeding situations other than for racing. And those who were very serious about breeding horses to add to the population. So we started to get attrition through non-production. And horses just died, and nobody was buying any horse because it's becoming more and more expensive to own a horse. I know all of you out there listening to me know how expensive it is to own a horse. And so now the population is getting smaller, and the number of veterinarians out there to take care of them was getting smaller. So it gets a little mathematical, but you don't have to be a mathematician to figure out that the pie is getting smaller and the number of vets servicing that is getting smaller. And the cost of becoming a veterinarian is increasing. So what does this do? I mean, again, you don't have to be a sociologist to figure this out, but anybody who's going to graduate from vet school and want to become a really good veterinarian is going to migrate to the epicenters of the horse world. Here in South Florida, it would certainly be Wellington. And I've often gone to a barn and seen 3 SUVs with their buoy units or portavets or whatever built into them at a major boarding stable, all working for somebody else, all visiting 3 different horses at least in the barn. They're tripping over each other. It's just, it's a scene that you can't understand. Here at Wellington, I may be wrong, but I think that there's 4 equine veterinary hospitals. I think at least 3 with MRIs, all within 5 miles. It's mind-blowing. The only other epicenters of horse care are the racetracks, where the vets are, constantly bumping into each other and constantly, if the horse owner doesn't like somebody's opinion, well, they get another person's opinion. And here in Wellington, it's not just the clinics that are there. We have vets that come from all over the world to come here and practice for their clients that are in here temporarily. From Europe and from Canada, from South America, they're coming in, and somehow through ingenuity, they are able to restock their supplies where I don't know how they do it actually. Hyperbaric chambers, there's more than one down here. It's just amazing. Ultrasound specialists, surgical units, emergency care facilities, they're actually tripping over each other. So it's not that way where you are, is it? I mean, a lot of you are sitting there and saying, gosh, I have one veterinarian or one vet clinic, and the vet clinic has a new person there, and that new person is still wet behind their ears, and they don't know one end of the horse from the other. And you have more experience in your small operation that you've been with for 10 years than the person who's standing in front of you representing themselves as a veterinarian. And it's not the veterinarian's fault. It's not the rookie's fault. They have been inundated by these schools that are bringing in more and more students because each student represents an income. And then all the vets are coming out thinking that they have to get all this equipment to become a really good veterinarian. And they're not getting that internship. They're not getting the residency. They're not getting the mentorship that they need. But unfortunately, if they intern a resident in a academic setting, that's all they know. And academic settings have the cash to have the MRIs and the fancy ultrasounds and other diagnostic equipment. And they have the labs there where they just take the blood and they send it upstairs. But they're not out there in the field, not 100 miles away from their clinic, not that they would ever go 100 miles. And that's really what's interesting. Basically, most of these students, and I'm going to say I confirm this, I'll put that in air quotes, but I confirmed this with a couple of students. I said, so tell me the truth. Is your first year spent learning how to say the sentence, let's draw blood? And they kind of laugh. And then I said, and the second year is spent learning how to turn the machines on. And then that's when they really break out in laughter and say, yes, basically that's what it is. It's all technology. It's all getting out there, learning how to turn the machine on, draw blood, and diagnose. And yet these students were just high schoolers, at the age of 18. And from high school, they go into an undergraduate college, and from there they go into a veterinary college. And so 8 years after 18, they're 26 years old with lots of book work under their, in their brain, but they have no experience on how to handle the horse. They have no horsemanship skills. So now they are going out and medicating every horse that they see with the crutch of saying, well, we can't do a very good job unless we do medicate them, mainly because nobody's taught them how to be horsemen. They have no mentors. And I find that almost every veterinarian I see out there today, the new ones, are fit into that bill. I mean, on occasion, I'll come across young vets who are extremely talented horse people. And God willing, they're extremely talented in communicating to horse owners. And that combination is going to guarantee that they'll have more work to do than they can possibly handle. And to do that and pay their bills, they basically travel a lot. They'll travel between Florida and the Northeast, let's say, or Southern California, all the way up and down the West Coast. But what happens to the person that's out in the middle of nowhere? What happens to the person who's got 3 or 4 horses that lives in the middle of the Adirondacks Mountains, which is the largest state park in our nation, that are having some horses that just go out for a dude ranch? Who's taking care of those? When it takes a full day just to get there, let alone do any work for a veterinarian, who's paying for their time to be away from their main practice? It's a mathematical issue. It has nothing to do, well, I shouldn't say it has nothing to do, but it is the primary reason why so many horse vets are not coming out of these colleges these days. If you're coming out of college with an incredible debt load, you're going to go into small animal practice because everyone's got small animals. They don't have a lot of horses. And so they become good at doing spays and neutering the boy cats and dogs and taking care of all the things there. But it makes it really hard for the horse owner to find a horse vet who wants to come out and take care of them. So I just saw an article in the JAVMA News. JAVMA is the Journal of the American Veterinary Medical Association. And the date is July of this year, 2021. And they are announcing that the Rosebud Sioux Tribe Reservation in South Dakota just got funding from Banfield and IDEX. Banfield is a huge corporation that has small animal clinics all over the nation. And IDEX is a huge corporation that deals with diagnostic equipment for veterinarians. And they are announcing a multi-year initiative, including infrastructure investment, support for veterinary care, and scholarships to provide sustainable and accessible care for more than 200,000 animals within the 20 communities of the Rosebud Reservation. That was a quote from this article. And I was just, immediately I'm saying, somebody's missing the point here. I mean, this is exactly what I've been talking about. Here are inhabitants of 880,000 acres in southern South Dakota. That's a huge reservation. And they have an estimated 200,000 owned or community dogs and cats, and 5,000 owned horses. There's no brick and mortar veterinary clinics on the reservation, forcing the Lakota Sioux Nation to rely on local and out-of-state partners and volunteers for intermittent veterinary care. And I'm like, okay, this is exactly what's going on. Here are 5,000 horses on an Indian reservation, and it could be anywhere in the United States in what I call a very rural area with no economic base to support the veterinary profession, because it costs so much to become a veterinarian that most practical minded people would not choose to become a veterinarian today because they can make more money driving a truck, investing the money they earn into real estate or Bitcoin or whatever you want to invest it in, and make more money and then retire. And I think the AAEP's letter of doing these interviews with people is going to be a dead end street, because most young people today want more money in less time and live a better lifestyle than their parents did or their grandparents did. And I'm old, okay? I don't consider myself old. I feel like I have a great health span and great lifespan coming up. But in everybody else's opinion, I've circled the sun 68 times. And in those 68 years, I've been with horses almost 50 years, 48 years. In the 48 years, I remember working 6.5 days a week. And in the half day of my day off, I would just go out and mow fields. I didn't have much of a life or anything else out of that. I just loved working with horses. And I knew that if I wanted to make a living, I needed to do something more than shovel manure. I needed to go out there and get a profession. And at that time, being a veterinarian was pretty good, but I was also driving 18-wheelers hauling horses. And I could probably make just as much money doing that as I would going back to veterinary school and expending all that money and getting all those debts and having to pay those debts for years. I would have been in a much better financial position if I'd said, look, I'm just going to stay with hauling horses. I've been driving for 30, 35 years. I've made all the money in investments. I'd probably be home as much or more than I was as a veterinarian for 12 years, where I was on call 24/7. I was a solo practitioner. I didn't have any days off. Christmas, I wrote a whole blog about the 3 calls I went on for Christmas Day, which is a pretty big holiday for Christians. But pick any holiday you want that you think is important, where you need to be with family or take time off to appreciate what you have. And to have it interrupted by a pager or nowadays a phone saying, help, I need your help. What happens to that person who's 100 miles away and they call and the vet doesn't even answer the phone because they're, not going to answer it? It's their day off. Now who's going to help these horse owners? And that's where the problem lies. The veterinarian profession is a dying profession, and the veterinary community is finally waking up to this problem. And there's at least two major reasons. Number one, the number of horses is diminishing. The number of veterinarians is diminishing to cover those horses. And the cost of becoming a veterinarian is too high. So those veterinarians are driven to the high dense populations of horses around cities outside of New York City or Chicago or name your, Los Angeles. It doesn't matter what major city it is. There's going to be horse farms around it because the people who own those horse farms also have to make a living to support their habit. So that's the biggest reason. And the second reason is the generational expectations of what a good lifestyle is, of being family oriented, being wanting to be around their family more, having time off. This thing called quality of life seems to be perpetrating everywhere. And now since the pandemic, I still go out to restaurants where they're half closed. They've got limited hours now. They say we can't find enough people to come serve. The people are being paid to stay home or get an equal amount of money just to stay home and collect than it is to go out and find any job. I've gone to Kentucky Fried Chicken where the dining room is closed. It's only drive-through because they can't find anybody to serve anybody inside the restaurant. So we have economic factors, we have generational factors, and we have just the economics of becoming a horse vet and coming out there and helping people. So it's pretty scary what's going on. And I don't know if there's a solution, but I will tell you this much here at the Horses Advocate. Circling back again, going around and around, starting here at the Horse's Advocate and going back out. I've been passionate about teaching horse owners how to become better horse owners, to be able to handle things, to be able to prevent problems. Just imagine if your horse is out a couple hundred miles away from anything, anywhere, and for some reason he runs into a tree and breaks a leg, or runs into some fencing that you've got and tears his flesh. Those are true emergencies. And being a veterinarian is really imperative. It's really important. But how do you heal these things? And that's one of the things that I could probably go over. How do you help a broken leg? How do you help how do you sew up a horse, suture them? These veterinarians, they do a great job. And they have so much more experience than you will ever have in doing and taking care of these things and saying, no, don't do that. But I don't want to go there. There are certain reasons why you need a veterinarian, just like you need a doctor. And if you don't, you're going to die or be scarred for life. But on the flip side, there's so many things that you could prevent. And the whole purpose of this Horse's Advocate is to help you prevent things, basically through nutrition, which is going to take care of probably 80 to 90% of almost all the problems we're having with horses can be resolved with nutrition. So I'm just suggesting that when you go to the Horse's Advocate and learn, whether you stay on the free side or become a member, that's where you can dig in and get some answers. So that's my goal in the next 30 or 40 years. Yes, I'll be 90 to 100. I'm going to continue to create a resource that you can come to get answers. So if you're living in a rural area, this isn't just America. This is in every corner of the globe. They need help. And there's no mentors. Your parents, your grandparents had dropped the reins and picked up the car keys, and their ability to be horsemen and to help you learn to connect and care for your horses has gone. It's what I call the missing horse owner's manual. You bought a horse. I just met a gal who joined yesterday, the Horse's Advocate. She says, hey, I got here because I've got a horse and I'm helping it, but I don't know if I've got all the answers. Well, that's what we're here for. We're here to help guide you to get the answers and put things together 2 and 2. So your horse can say, and I'm going to admit something to you that I really shouldn't. This is the juicy stuff. So stop everything and listen. Dr. Tucker, the equine veterinarian, knows nothing about female dogs. Nothing. And my wife, now we together have a female dog that has decided to come into heat for the first time. And she turns to me and she says, well, tell me about heat and dogs. I'm like, I know nothing. I know nothing about heat cycles and dogs. I can sit here all day and talk about mares, but when it comes to female dogs, I don't have a clue. But I just know that they make panties for them so they don't spill their blood all over the place. And we now have a mop that cleans things up, and we have panties for the poor girl, so she doesn't spot on the carpets. But I didn't know anything. So where do I go to find information on how to prevent problems in female dogs? Is there a website? Well, I'm sure there is, but I just told my wife, well, you figure it out. So she talked to the breeder and got all the information she needed. But what about you? What about you who've decided to get a horse and you're new at it? You're like, this is your first year or your first 5 years with horses. And who are you turning to get that information from? You're turning to supplement makers, grain manufacturers, and anybody else who's got something to sell to you with no clear understanding, except you're finding groups that are brought together due to an ailment such as Cushing's disease. Everyone wants to know what to do because their horse has just been diagnosed with Cushing's. And where are you going to find the really good answers to dig down deep and figure out why? Well, that's what the Horse's Advocate's all about. So yeah, Houston, we have a problem. We know that Uh, there's a tremendous need for horse vets out there, but there's no economic incentive for anyone to become a horse vet, and certainly not to be a horseman first and then come back and become a horse vet. So I just want to share with you what's happening in the world. I did have one other thing as far as dentistry goes, because dentistry is one of those passionate topics for me. I believe that you don't have to be a veterinarian to apply the routine dental care prevention, yet almost every state requires it. And for instance, in South Dakota, according to this one website, it says that a licensed veterinarian is allowed to perform all equine dental procedures. Let me interpret that. If you're not a veterinarian, you can't do dentistry in the state of South Dakota. It did say that you could be a veterinary technician working under the direction or supervision of a licensed veterinarian by whom that person is employed. Now think about that. Here we are out on the Indian reservation where there are 5,000 horses. Well, how many of those 5,000 horses need a dentist to look at it? Well, they're going to have to hire a veterinarian at one of these clinics that wants to go out there and actually perform the dentistry. And if not, they need to bring in somebody from out of state who's licensed in that state to do that dentistry. Or if not, they have to get an animal technician. And if they have a licensed animal technician, what's interesting is it says under the supervision of a veterinarian. They didn't say an equine veterinarian. So now they have a vet tech out there with very little experience trying to float horses' teeth. And there's no real veterinary backup with experience. So this nation, this Indian, let me get this right. The Sioux Tribe Reservation, the Rosebud Sioux Tribe Reservation, doesn't have anybody out there who can do this. Now, if somebody from that reservation wants to come and learn and then go back there and practice, as long as they're a licensed veterinary technician, they can do that, but they still don't have a backup of a veterinarian who can go out there and say, yes, we have a fractured tooth, or we have something that needs more diagnostics or more veterinary care. So this beautiful donation from these two major corporations, the veterinary community, setting up a brick and mortar veterinary clinic is still falling short. And there's not going to be a vet student who's going to come out of veterinary medicine from vet school and say, hey, I think I'll go to this reservation and practice equine dentistry in 5,000 horses. Because 5,000 horses, divide that by 12 months, that's a lot of horses that they have to do. And you could have 2 full-time equine veterinarians out there floating teeth and cover it all. And still have a pretty good lifestyle, but they're not going to be taking care of colics or sewing up cuts. So it's still a logistical nightmare everywhere on the planet. How do the working equids in either Africa or Asia or the Caribbean or Central America, or where are they getting their veterinary care? And if they're practicing veterinary care that requires medications, how on earth are they supposed to do that when they don't have access to these medications that we have here in America? I know my son lives in Thailand, and Thailand just opened its borders to some illegal zebra trade. And the zebras came in and brought along with them African horse sickness, which killed, I think it was 580 horses of their population of, I think it was 18,000 horses in the country of Thailand. I mean, that's pretty devastating to have 580 horses just die from a disease, a viral disease that doesn't exist here in America. But that's what happened because they don't know what they're doing. And if they had a veterinarian whose specialty is just horses working in their government, they would have had some sort of way to be looking for this disease that would not allow it to come in. But here in America, we have equine paraplasmosis coming across the Mexican border, because believe it or not, horses are crossing the southern border illegally and coming to the bush tracks for quarter horse racing. And they're bringing that in. They're bringing equine infectious anemia, the virus that's behind the Coggins test. They bring it in, and they're constantly having these little sites pop up. We need horse vets everywhere. We need them on our immigration for horses, or it's not called immigration. What's it called? Importation of horses, exportation in the federal government. We need it in our state legislatures or state departments of agriculture. We need them to have every state divided by the square miles they cover and determine how many horse vets they need. And we have to start generating horse vets to come out there and take care of these horses. And if you want the millennials to have time off, then you better double that number. So some vet can have time off while the other vet's working. And heaven forbid those two vets want to make a life together, then they can never have a vacation together. So it's not like it was 50 years ago. It's just nothing like it 100 years ago. All the old timers that I talked to that are at least 50 years old, who've been in the veterinary business for 35, 40 years or longer, they all say the same thing. We enjoyed what we were doing. It was our life. It was our passion. It's what we gave ourselves 100% to at all times. Our family was important to us. There's no doubt. But what was important to us was our family of horse owners and their horses. And they were incorporated in that. And yes, we would travel an hour, hour and a half, even 2 hours of driving just to reach some of these horses, take care of them. My original practice was a 50-mile radius. So I would be on one side of my radius and go all the way to the other. That's 100 miles going straight through the center. And I would travel 100 miles and take care of an emergency. And everybody was willing to say, okay, come another day, doc. I understand you have an emergency down there. I get it. But now everything's brought to the clinic. Everything is within, 3, 10, 20 miles maximum, and nobody's willing to travel. And I know it's getting harder and harder, especially with the pandemic. It's hard for these vets to get out there and do this. So I don't have a real answer. I look forward to the AAEP giving me a call, or maybe you can just listen to this podcast and understand that, Houston, we have a problem. And I don't think it's going to resolve. I think us horse owners are in a major turning point of owning horses. And it's getting more expensive, and land is getting scarcer. And the veterinary care that we need is getting fewer and far between. And all the gaps are being filled with specialties, from farriers that are just doing, for instance, quarter cracks or laminitis instead of just doing general farrier work, massage therapists, acupuncturists, and all these people who may or may not have a veterinary license are going out there trying to fill in the void to help us horse owners, where the horse owners don't understand they could probably take care of most of these things themselves. So that's what the Horses Advocate is all about, helping you guys become a better horse owner, help them learn to thrive in a human world. And with that, I'm going to leave this podcast. I've pretty much beaten it to a pulp. I've got more to do. I've got places to go, things to see. So do you. I'm glad you stayed here this long. Please go to thehorsesadvocate.com and consider becoming a member, where we can open up this discussion a little bit more. We have rounds once a month. We have these podcasts that are free to everybody, but the rounds are for members only. And for the future, I'm considering having a what I call a community barn, where all the members just get together and bring their questions, and just it'll be a, ask everybody one question. Well, what do you do about fly control into your barn? And we just start talking about it. I think that's going to be coming up this fall. We just have to put a little bit more thought into it. All right, here's Doc T saying goodbye. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you next time. Bye.
Hey everyone, Doc T here. Thank you for listening to my content. Would you do me a huge favor? Would you please subscribe, comment, like, thumbs up, and give a star review? However it's presented to you, I want you to do that. There's two reasons. The first, of course, is to improve this product. This way I know what you like, what you don't like, what I can improve upon, what topics you want me to cover. But more importantly, it's also going to help others find me. And by doing that, you are now engaged in this mission of helping horses thrive in a human world. By you helping, we can reach others. And that I would be so grateful for. And remember, go to thehorsesadvocate.com for updates on this information. Thehorsesadvocate.com. And again, thank you so much for being here. Doc T out.